I never thought my own son could betray me so viciously, pouring scalding coffee over my head, searing my skin and shattering my heart, all because I dared say no to his greedy $20,000 demand. I never thought a simple breakfast in my son's Ohio home could turn my world upside down. I'm Margaret, a 68-year-old retired nurse, living off my pension and the savings my late husband George left me. Our split-level house in suburban Columbus was supposed to be my safe haven after George passed. The kitchen smelled of burnt toast and fresh coffee with sunlight streaming through the blinds. I sat at the oak table, sipping my mug, thinking it'd be just another quiet morning. Michael, my only son, was flipping through his phone across from me, while my grandson Ethan, 17, slouched in the corner, earbuds in. It felt normal, familiar, until Michael looked up, his voice casual but sharp, like a knife wrapped in velvet. "Mom, I need your credit card." Ethan's got his eye on a used Mustang, $20,000. It's a steal. My stomach tightened. I'd already spotted unexplained charges on my bank statement. $500 here, $1,000 there. "No, Michael," I said, keeping my voice steady. "That's too much." His eyes narrowed, and the air in the room turned heavy, like a storm rolling in. "You're sitting on George's money, Mom. What's the big deal?" he snapped. Ethan didn't even look up, but I saw his smirk. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a car. It was about control. My control, and Michael thought he'd already taken it. I gripped my mug tighter, my knuckles white, as his words hung between us. "You owe us, Mom. We let you stay here." Let me stay? In the house I'd paid the mortgage on for 15 years? The betrayal cut deeper than the coffee burn. I needed answers. And I needed them now. That morning in the kitchen, with the sting of Michael's words still burning hotter than the coffee he'd poured on me, I knew I couldn't just sit there. His demand for $20,000 wasn't a one-time thing. It was a symptom of something uglier. I started digging, quietly, like I was sneaking through my own life. The first clue came when I checked my bank app on my old phone, hidden under a pile of knitting magazines in my bedroom. My account, the one George and I had built over 30 years, was bleeding. A $2,000 withdrawal to an auto shop. A $1,500 transfer to a PayPal account I didn't recognize. Another $800 gone to some online gaming store. None of it was mine. My hands shook as I scrolled, the numbers blurring through my tears. "Michael," I whispered to myself, "what have you done?" I confronted him that evening, after Ethan had gone to his room, blasting music through his headphones. The living room was dim, the TV flickering with some reality show Michael loved. I stood in the doorway, clutching my phone like evidence. "Michael, there's money missing from my account. Thousands. Did you take it?" His head snapped up, eyes cold, like I'd accused him of stealing a cookie, not my life savings. "Mom, relax," he said, leaning back on the couch, his voice dripping with that fake calm he'd mastered. "I borrowed a little to cover some bills. You know, for the house. You're not exactly pulling your weight around here." My weight? I'd been paying the electric bill, the water, even the Wi-Fi Ethan burned through daily. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't ask me, Michael. That's my money." He laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that cut deeper than his words. "Your money? Mom, you're living in my house now. Be grateful we didn't stick you in some nursing home after Dad died." The room spun. My house. My house. George and I had bought this place, paid every mortgage payment, every repair, every tax bill. I'd never signed it over, but Michael acted like it was his kingdom. I opened my mouth to argue, but he stood, towering over me, his 6-foot frame blocking the light. "Don't make this a thing, Mom," he said, his voice low, threatening. "You're lucky we keep you here." Ethan needs that car, and you're gonna help one way or another. He walked out, leaving me standing there, my heart pounding like it did during my worst shifts in the ER. The next day, I noticed something worse. My mail wasn't coming anymore. I used to get bank statements, bills, even junk mail, but the mailbox was empty for weeks. I asked Michael about it, casual, like I didn't suspect anything. "Oh, I switched it to paperless," he said, not looking up from his phone. "Easier for me to manage." Manage? I hadn't asked him to manage anything. That night, I waited until he and Ethan were out, probably at some sports bar, and I crept into his home office. My hands trembled as I opened his desk drawer. There they were, my bank statements, stuffed under a pile of car magazines. Pages of transactions I'd never seen. A $5,000 withdrawal last month. Another $3,000 to a loan company. My name, my account, but not my permission. I felt like I was choking, like the walls of this house were closing in. Then, I heard Ethan's voice from the hallway, home early. "Grandma, what are you doing in Dad's stuff?" His tone wasn't curious. It was accusing, like I was the thief. I froze, the statements crinkling in my hands. "Just looking for something," I mumbled, shoving them back. He didn't move, just stared, his eyes as cold as Michael's. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just Michael. Ethan was in on it too. They weren't just taking my money, they were erasing me. My friends from the church book club hadn't called in months. Michael always said they were too busy, but now I wondered if he'd told them I was too frail to join. I was a prisoner in my own home, and I hadn't even seen the bars until now. I needed to know how deep this went, and I needed help. Fast. The bank statements I found in Michael's desk were just the beginning, but they were enough to make my blood run cold. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, the house quiet except for the hum of the furnace in the basement. My fingers traced the numbers on the crumpled pages, 5,000, 3,000, 2,000, all siphoned away without a word. But it wasn't just the money, it was the realization that every sacrifice I'd made for Michael, every late shift in the ER, every birthday I missed to pay for his college, was being ground into dust. I thought I'd seen the worst of it, but I was wrong. The next morning, I decided to check something I hadn't touched in years. The deed to our house in Columbus. George and I had signed it together, a promise etched in ink that this home was ours, forever. I kept it in a fireproof safe under the guest room floorboards, hidden behind a stack of old photo albums. I waited until Michael and Ethan left for the day. Michael to his job at the car dealership, Ethan to school. My hip ached as I knelt, prying up the loose board with a butter knife. The safe was still there, its dial dusty but intact. I spun the combination, my hands trembling, and pulled out the folder. My heart stopped. The deed was there, but it wasn't right. My name was still listed, but there was a new document clipped to it. A transfer form dated 6 months ago, with my signature forged in Michael's jagged scrawl. He'd tried to move the house into his name, claiming it as his own. I sank to the floor, the papers slipping from my hands. This wasn't just theft, it was erasure. My home, my legacy, the place where George and I danced in the living room to old Sinatra records. It was being stolen, and I was supposed to be too old, too frail, to notice. I don't know how long I sat there, the cold hardwood biting into my knees, but then I heard the front door creak open. Michael wasn't supposed to be home yet. I stuffed the papers back into the safe, my pulse racing, and limped to the hallway. He was in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge, his phone buzzing on the counter. I stood frozen, watching as a text popped up on the screen. It was from his buddy Dave, from the dealership. "Yo, you still milking the old lady for that cash? Told you she's too out of it to notice." My throat burned like I'd swallowed acid. I grabbed the phone before I could stop myself, scrolling up. Another message, from Michael this time. Mom's a gold mine. House is practically mine. She's too weak to fight back. I dropped the phone like it was poison. My son, my own flesh and blood, wasn't just stealing. He was laughing about it, mocking me, calling me a gold mine like I was some ATM with a pulse. Mom, what the hell? Michael's voice snapped me back. He'd turned around, his face red, eyes blazing. You're snooping now? You got no business touching my stuff? I stood my ground, though my legs felt like jelly. Your stuff? Michael, you forged my name. You're stealing my house. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice low and venomous. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Mom. Just give me the card, sign whatever I need, and we're good. Or you can pack your bags and figure out where to go. Pack my bags? From my own home? I wanted to scream, to throw his phone at the wall, but my voice came out small, cracked. You don't get to decide that, Michael, he smirked like he'd already won. Try me. Ethan and I don't need you dragging us down. I stumbled back to my room, my chest tight like I was drowning in my own skin. The framed photo of Michael as a boy, smiling at a county fair with cotton candy in his hand, sat on my dresser. I'd kept it there to remember the son I loved. Now it felt like a lie, a ghost of someone who never existed. I wasn't just losing my money or my house. I was losing him, the boy I'd raised, the man I thought he'd become. The pain was a living thing, clawing at my heart, sharper than any coffee burn. But in that moment something shifted. I wasn't going to let him bury me. Not yet. I needed to find someone who could help me fight back. Someone who'd see me as more than a gold mine. I needed Susan. The pain of Michael's betrayal, his forged signature on my house deed, and those cruel texts calling me a gold mine, sat like a stone in my chest. But I wasn't going to let it crush me. I'd survived too much: George's death, a hip replacement, years of 12-hour ER shifts, to let my own son bury me in my own home. That night, after finding those papers, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the hum of the Columbus suburbs outside my window. I knew I couldn't stay. Not anymore. Michael's threat to kick me out wasn't just words. It was a promise, and I wasn't waiting for him to make good on it. I needed to move. And I needed help. Susan's name came to me like a lifeline. She was my old friend from church, a retired lawyer who'd always had a knack for seeing through people's nonsense. I hadn't spoken to her in months, thanks to Michael's lies about my frailty, but I still had her number, scribbled in an old address book tucked in my nightstand. I waited until dawn, when the house was still, the only sound the faint ticking of the grandfather clock George loved. I dialed Susan, my fingers shaking, half expecting her voicemail. She picked up on the third ring, her voice warm but sharp, like she'd been waiting for this call. Margaret, you okay? It's been too long. I took a breath, my voice barely above a whisper. Susan, I'm in trouble. Michael's stealing from me. My money, my house, everything. I need to get out. There was a pause, then her tone hardened. Pack a bag. I'm coming to get you tonight. Don't tell him. I nodded, though she couldn't see me, tears burning my eyes. For the first time in months, I wasn't alone. All day, I moved like a ghost through the house, careful not to tip Michael off. He was in the garage, tinkering with some car part, while Ethan played video games upstairs, the bass thumping through the ceiling. I pulled my old suitcase from the closet, the one George and I used for our last trip to Florida 10 years ago. It smelled faintly of sunscreen and better days. I packed light, just clothes, my wedding ring, a few photos, and the deed I'd pulled from the safe. I hid the suitcase under my bed, my heart racing every time I heard a floorboard creak. By dusk, I was a bundle of nerves, checking my phone every 5 minutes for Susan's text. Michael noticed me pacing and smirked from the couch. What's with you, Mom? You're acting weird. I forced a smile, my stomach churning. Just tired, Michael. I'm going to bed early. He shrugged, his eyes back on his phone, probably checking my bank account again. Susan's car pulled up at 8 p.m., her headlights cutting through the Ohio darkness like a beacon. I slipped out the back door, my hip aching with every step, dragging the suitcase across the dew-soaked grass. Susan was waiting in her old Buick, her silver hair glowing under the streetlight. "Get in quick," she whispered, her voice steady but urgent. I climbed in, my breath shallow, and she drove off before I could look back. The house faded in the rearview mirror, its windows dark, like it was already forgetting me. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice trembling. Susan glanced at me, her eyes kind but fierce. "My place for tonight. Tomorrow, we're getting you to Florida. Golden Palms. That retirement community you and George always talked about. You're not staying in that snake pit another day." Florida. The word felt like a dream, too far away to be real, but Susan's voice was an anchor, pulling me toward something solid. We drove 10 miles to her small condo in Dublin, Ohio, the silence between us heavy but comforting. Inside, she poured me a glass of iced tea, the ice clinking softly, and sat me down at her kitchen table. "Tell me everything?" she said. I spilled it all, the missing money, the forged deed, the texts, Michael's threats. My voice broke when I got to Ethan's cold stare like I was nothing to him. Susan listened, her jaw tight, scribbling notes on a legal pad. "This isn't just theft, Margaret," she said, her voice low. "It's elder abuse. We're going to fix this, but first, we get you safe." Safe. The word felt foreign, like a language I'd forgotten. As I sipped the tea, my hands steadier now, I realized I wasn't just running. I was fighting back. And to do that, I needed to know exactly what Michael had done with my money and how to take it all back. The iced tea Susan poured me that night in her Ohio condo tasted like courage, but my hands still shook as I clutched the glass. I'd escaped Michael's house, my suitcase now tucked in her guest room, but the weight of his betrayal clung to me like damp air. The forged deed, the stolen thousands, the mocking texts, they weren't just wounds, they were evidence. Susan, with her lawyer's eyes, and a heart that didn't flinch, saw it too. The next morning, she drove me 15 miles to a small office in downtown Columbus, where she introduced me to Karen, a financial abuse specialist with a handshake firm enough to steady my nerves. The office smelled of coffee and old paper, with sunlight slicing through the blinds. Karen spread my bank statements across her desk, her pen circling transactions I hadn't authorized. $7,000 to a car loan, $40,200 to a furniture store. Fund you $1,800 for Ethan's gaming setup. "This isn't just sloppy," Karen said, her voice calm but cutting. "Your son's been draining you systematically. And that deed transfer? It's fraud, plain and simple." I sat there, my stomach twisting, as Karen pulled up a county record on her computer. My house in Columbus, the one George and I had poured our lives into, was now listed under Michael's name, with a second mortgage taken out for $50,000. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. "He mortgaged my house?" My voice cracked, barely a whisper. Karen nodded, her eyes softening. "He used a forged power of attorney to do it, but here's the good news, Margaret. You never signed over full control. The house is still legally yours. We can fight this." Fight. The word felt like a spark in the dark. Susan squeezed my hand under the table. "We're not just fighting for the house," she said. "We're fighting for you." Karen laid out the plan: file a financial protection order to freeze my accounts, flag all recent transactions, and sue for fraud to reverse the deed transfer. I nodded, my heart pounding, but a flicker of fear lingered. Michael wasn't just sneaky, he was ruthless. What if he came after me? Susan read my face. "He can't touch you in Florida," she said, her voice like steel. "Golden Palms has security, and I've got a friend in Tampa who can help with the legal paperwork. That afternoon, we drove back to her condo, and I spent hours sorting through my documents, old bank records, George's will, a notepad where I jotted down every suspicious withdrawal I could remember. Each number was a stab, a reminder of how Michael had turned my trust into a weapon. But with every page I handed Karen, I felt a piece of myself coming back. The next day, Susan booked us a flight to Tampa. My stomach churned as we boarded the plane, my suitcase in the overhead bin, the deed safely tucked in my purse. The hum of the engines felt like a promise, but Michael's voice still echoed in my head, his smirk, his threat to kick me out. I glanced at Susan, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed legal forms. "What if he fights back?" I asked, my voice small. She looked up, her eyes fierce. "Let him try, Margaret. He's not fighting a tired old lady anymore. He's fighting us." Her words lit something inside me, a fire I hadn't felt since George was alive. When we landed in Florida, the humid air hit me like a warm embrace. Golden Palms was everything Susan had promised. A gated community with palm trees swaying, a sparkling pool, and bungalows that glowed in the sunset. My temporary apartment, a cozy one-bedroom with a view of a koi pond, felt like a sanctuary. That night I sat on the balcony, the deed on the table beside me, and called Karen. She'd already filed the protection order, freezing my accounts and flagging Michael's transactions. "We've got a case," she said, her voice crackling through the phone. "But there's more. Michael tried to take out another loan yesterday, $30,000, using your house as collateral. The bank stopped it because of the freeze." I exhaled, relief mixing with rage. He hadn't stopped, even after I left. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Michael. His voice was a mix of charm and venom. "Mom, this is crazy. Come home, let's talk. You don't need to do this. Ethan's freaking out." I didn't call back. Instead, I handed the phone to Susan, who forwarded the message to Karen. "That's evidence," she said, her pen tapping the table. "He's scared now." Scared. The word felt foreign, applied to Michael. But as I stood in my new apartment, the Florida sun warming my face, I realized I wasn't the one running anymore. I was building a case, brick by brick, and Michael was about to face the consequences. I just needed to be ready for his next move. The Florida sun was high, painting the koi pond at Golden Palms in shades of gold, but my heart still raced from Karen's call about Michael's failed $30,000 loan attempt. I'd settled into my bungalow, the air smelling of jasmine and fresh paint, a world away from the cold Ohio house where Michael had tried to erase me. My phone sat silent now, his last voicemail, dripping with fake concern, forwarded to Karen as evidence. I thought I was safe, 1,000 miles from Columbus, but I underestimated Michael's desperation. Susan warned me he wouldn't give up, and she was right. 3 days after I arrived, I was sipping lemonade by the community pool, the laughter of other retirees floating around me when I heard a commotion at the front gate. My stomach dropped. I knew it was him before I even looked. I walked to the sunroom, its tinted glass giving me a clear view of the entrance without being seen. Michael stood there, his face flushed, pacing like a caged animal. Ethan slouched behind him, hands in his hoodie pockets, looking more annoyed than guilty. A security guard, Linda, a no-nonsense woman with a walkie-talkie clipped to her belt, blocked their path. Michael's voice carried through the glass, loud and jagged. "I need to see my mother. You can't keep me out." Linda didn't budge, her arms crossed. "Sir, you're not on the visitor list. Step back or I call the police." My heart thudded, not from fear, but from a strange, quiet power. For the first time, Michael wasn't in control. I was. I could have gone out, faced him, let him yell until his voice gave out. But I didn't. I sat down, my hands steady on the wicker chair, the lemonade glass sweating in the heat. Susan joined me, her eyes scanning the scene. "He's unhinged," she muttered, sipping her own drink. "Look at him, Margaret. He's not here for you. He's here for the money." She was right. Michael's gestures were wild, pointing at the gate, then at Ethan, who rolled his eyes like this was all my fault. "Mom!" Michael shouted, his voice cracking. "I know you're in there. Stop this nonsense and talk to me." Linda raised a hand, her voice firm. "Last warning, sir. Leave now." Ethan tugged at Michael's sleeve, muttering something, and I caught the words, "waste of time." They didn't care about me. They cared about the accounts I'd frozen, the house I was taking back. I leaned back, my breath steady, watching Michael's face twist with rage. It was the same look he'd given me when I refused his $20,000 demand, when he poured that coffee over my head. But now I wasn't the one trembling. I wasn't the one locked out. Susan touched my arm, her voice soft. "You don't have to do anything, you know. Let him scream." I nodded, my eyes fixed on Michael as he threw his hands up, shouting one last time. "You're making a mistake, Mom. You'll regret this." Linda stepped forward, her walkie-talkie crackling, and Michael finally turned, storming back to his rental car, Ethan trailing behind. The gate clicked shut, a sound sharper than any lock I'd ever heard. I didn't move, didn't wave, didn't flinch. I just sat there, the sun warming my face, the koi pond rippling in the distance. As their car peeled out of the lot, tires squealing on the asphalt, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't victory, not yet. It was clarity. Michael thought he could bully his way back into my life. But he didn't know me anymore. He didn't know the woman who'd survived losing George, who'd walked out of that Ohio house with nothing but a suitcase and a deed. Susan leaned over, her voice low. "He's gonna try again, you know, probably with lawyers." I smiled, a small, fierce thing. "Let him. Karen's ready, and so am I." For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to Michael's chaos. I was choosing my own path, and it led right here, to the sunlit sanctuary where I could breathe. But I knew this wasn't the end. Michael's anger was a fire that wouldn't burn out easily, and I needed to be ready for what came next. A fight not just for my house, but for my voice. Watching Michael storm away from the Golden Palms gate, his tires screeching on the Florida asphalt, I felt a quiet strength settle over me, like the warm breeze rustling the palm trees. The koi pond shimmered nearby, its ripples catching the afternoon sun, and for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what he might do next. I'd faced him, through the glass, through the law, and I'd won. Not because I shouted back, but because I chose silence. A silence that spoke louder than his threats. Sitting in that sunroom, with Susan sipping her lemonade beside me, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who'd ever felt trapped by someone they loved. Every retiree who'd been told their life was no longer theirs to control. I wanted to scream it from the rooftops. You're not powerless, no matter how old you are. Susan set her glass down, her eyes still on the gate, where Michael and Ethan had disappeared. "You did good, Margaret," she said, her voice soft but proud. "Most people would have caved, gone back to him, signed whatever he wanted." I shook my head, my fingers tracing the edge of my chair. "I almost did," I admitted. Back in Ohio, when he called me a burden, I believed it. I thought I owed him my life because he let me stay in my own house. Susan's laugh was sharp, like a crack of thunder. "Your house, Margaret, your money, your life." He doesn't get to rewrite that story. Her words hit me like a lifeline, pulling me back to the truth I'd forgotten. I wasn't just a mother or a grandmother. I was a person, with rights, with worth. That evening, I walked to the Golden Palms Community Center, where a group of retirees played bridge under twinkling string lights. Their laughter was warm, unguarded, and I envied it. I sat at a corner table, a notepad in front of me, scribbling thoughts I hadn't dared to voice before. What if I wasn't the only one? How many others were sitting in homes they'd built, watching their bank accounts drain, their voices silenced by family who saw them as a paycheck? I wrote down questions, raw and real. Have you checked your bank statements lately? Do you know who has access to your accounts? Does your family respect your no? I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing. Silence wasn't the answer. Not anymore. I thought about Michael's voicemail, his fake concern, and Ethan's cold eyes at the gate. They thought they could guilt me back, make me feel small again. But I wasn't small. I'd fought for my house, my money, my freedom, and I was still standing. I wanted others to know they could stand too. I imagined people watching this story, maybe someone in a small town like Columbus or a city like Tampa, feeling that same knot of fear I'd felt. I wanted them to hear this. You don't have to stay. You don't have to let family or anyone steal your worth. Check your accounts. Call a lawyer. Say no. It's not selfish. It's survival. Susan joined me at the table, her eyes scanning my notes. You're writing a manifesto, she teased, but her smile was serious. You should share this, Margaret. People need to hear it. I hesitated, my pen hovering over the page. What if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm just a bitter old woman? Susan leaned forward, her voice steady. Then you show them the truth. You've got the receipts, literally. Tell your story. It's bigger than you now. Her words sank in, heavy and true. I wasn't just fighting for me anymore. I was fighting for every person who'd been told they were too old to matter. As the bridge game wound down, I stood up, my knees a little shaky, but my heart steady. I walked to the koi pond, the water glinting under the moonlight, and made a promise to myself. I'd share this story, not for revenge, but for hope. For the woman in Ohio who checks her bank account tonight. For the man in Florida who says no tomorrow. For anyone who thinks family means you owe them everything. I wasn't done yet. There was one more step to take. One more truth to claim. And it started with owning my story. Loud and clear. The sun dipped low over golden palms, painting the koi pond in hues of amber and pink, and I sat on my balcony, a cup of chamomile tea warming my hands. The Florida air was soft, carrying the scent of jasmine, and for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged to myself. Michael's screams at the gate, his forged deeds, his stolen thousands, 20,000, 50,000 more, they were ghosts now, fading in the light of this new life. I'd taken back my house, my accounts, my voice, with Susan and Karen by my side. The Columbus house, where George and I had built our dreams, was mine again, its deeds safe in a Tampa lawyer's office. Michael hadn't called since the gate, and Ethan's silence was louder than his earbuds ever were. I didn't need their apologies. I needed this peace. Living here, among the laughter of bridge games and the ripple of the pond, I learned something vital. Your worth isn't tied to what you give others, even family. I used to think love meant saying yes to Michael's demands, to Ethan's wants. But love starts with saying no when it matters. For anyone listening, here's what I wish I'd known sooner. Check your bank statements. Every month, no matter who you trust. Keep your passwords private, even from family. If someone makes you feel small, find a lawyer, a friend, a voice like Susan's to remind you who you are. You're never too old to start over. At 68, I did. I moved 1,000 miles, fought for my home, and found a community where I'm not a burden, but a neighbor. I look at the koi now, gliding without fear, and I see myself. Not the woman Michael tried to break, but the one who stood up. If my story resonates, if you've ever felt trapped by someone you love, I hope you'll share it. Click that like button, leave a comment, tell me your story, because no one should feel alone in this fight. Subscribe if you want to hear more, not just from me, but from others reclaiming their lives. Your voice matters, and I'm here, listening, ready to cheer you on.